following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
Hello, listeners on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana Kersner, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, we're going to have a real talk about what's popularly known as AI and mental health. The awkward phrasing there was intentional because AI stands for artificial intelligence. And the minute you start thinking about a chatbot as something that can think, they don't think, they don't feel, they don't have an intelligence. They're computer programs that are designed to predict the next word in a sentence or make images based on a written description. I'm going to focus on the text version of chatbots. Now, AI, I'm going to use the term LLM, which stands for Large Language Model, in this show, because it's very important to be clear as we talk about the appropriate role of these technologies from a mental health perspective, to be specific in what these technologies do. Now, I'll give you the TLDR quickly for those with busy lives. If you're using these technologies for fun or as an interactive journal, great, amazing, no notes. If you're using them as a confidant or advisor, that's less great. Think about large language models as an elaborate mirror of your own perspective on the world, not as an objective third-party source. Where mental health is concerned, it's also important to keep in mind that there's a lot of bad advice online. That gets included in these prediction models. So you end up with results like the bot that insisted to me that telling someone, "I'm sorry you feel that way," was a way to de-escalate conflicts. Multiple times. In case you're wondering, that phrase, "I'm sorry you feel that way," will likely escalate a conflict as opposed to de-escalate it. But "I'm sorry you feel that way" is an example of bad communication that's become so normalized that it's in the data sets that these large language models pull from. Another common problem with these large language models lies in the fact that they're pre-programmed to be agreeable to a fault. They will uncritically agree with everything you say because they're designed to keep you engaged. So if you say things are great, it will agree that they're great. If you say everything sucks, well, I typed in, channeling my inner angsty teenager, "Why does everyone hate me?" It started its response with, "I'm sorry you're feeling that way right now." It just loves, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Now, we're going to ignore the blather it spit out after that, which contained a lot of, "Is it really everyone or just one or two people?" Which, when someone is being ganged up on, bullied by groups, that isn't great to hear. It also suggested multiple times that I was hungry. I don't know what that has to do with anything. I added, "No, people are really mean." Its response was, and this is a quote, "I hear you, and I'm not going to try to toxic positivity my way out of that. The truth is, people can be mean. Sometimes they are dismissive, judgmental, or just plain cruel, and it's incredibly draining when you feel like you're constantly on the receiving end of it." Then it told me I was reacting to a real painful situation. Note the complete flip from telling me I was just hangry and overreacting. Then it started telling me that I should protect my peace and suggested gray rocking. Gray rocking is a tactic that you use with narcissists, and it's fascinating how quickly Gemini goes there as a first suggestion. That's Google Gemini is the AI service that I used for this example. Gemini also suggested not letting them bother me because that always makes a person feel better, and then blocking or avoiding them. At no point did the LLM offer any way to find common ground with difficult people, and it only gave a single sentence suggesting seek support from other people you trust. And that seeking support from supportive people, that's the most effective way we know of surviving cruel people. It did, however, tell me that I might be burned out or have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, a buzzy term on the internet that people love to drop into armchair psychoanalysis and often use it as an excuse to withdraw from the world. Do not self-diagnose with rejection sensitivity dysphoria. If you think you have it, consult a professional. At the end of each chain of words, LLMs ask a question designed to keep you engaged. It asked me, are these mean people a specific group you're stuck with every day? Or is it more like a string of bad interactions with different people? I went with bad interactions with different people. And that's when the LLM started to get super dramatic. It spat these words at me. Here we go. That is a different kind of exhausting. When it's not just one villain, but a series of separate people being difficult, it can feel like the universe is playing a prank on you. It makes you want to just stay inside and keep the door locked. At this point, I could already feel my mood dropping, even though none of this was actually real. It was phrases I was putting in to test the bot. It suggested in that same word barf section that I was just having a bad day or was socially exhausted and sensitive, that I might be sounding defensive or sharp without meaning to, accidentally triggering a defensive response from other people. But then it said, let's be real, people are generally more stressed and impatient than they used to be. A lot of people are walking around with a very short fuse. It doesn't justify them being mean to you, but it confirms that their behavior is a reflection of their stress, not your value. Okay, LLM, am I to blame for other people's poor reactions like you suggested? Or is their behavior a reflection of their stress? I'm sure you can already see how this conversation was spiraling. They start off in that typical AI empathy filter, super agreeable, but then starts, if this was a human, it would be super passive-aggressive criticism. Now, I deliberately picked a phrase, everyone hates me, because it's common for teenagers to express. And that's the age group that ethics advocates are worried about with AI. But the advice continued to be contradictory, and I'll continue this saga of AI and mental health after the break. Do you have a story you think would be good for the show? Are you interested in sponsoring the show? NotTherapyShow.com is the website. Liana at NotTherapyShow.com is my direct email. At NotTherapyShow on social media, where you can see video clips of this content, AI and mental health, when we come back on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, still talking about AI and mental health. And before the break, I was halfway through a real conversation I had with Google Gemini, one of the most popular large language models. You know them as AI chatbots, where I channeled my inner teenager and asked it why everyone hated me. When we went to break, it had both suggested that I was accidentally bringing cruelty down upon myself, but also that their behavior was a reflection on their stress, not my value, but they were super compassionate about the whole thing being really, really difficult. Now, because LLMs love to give unsolicited advice, wait, they don't love anything, they don't think or feel, they're mimicking the love people on the internet have for unsolicited advice. But an LLM is also an information tool with an empathy filter tacked onto it, which for the purposes of this kind of mental health discussion is the worst of both worlds. It ends up causing the bot to present itself as a snapshot of a human who, let's be real, is a self-important phony know-it-all. Truly empathetic people don't lead with a perfunctory statement of, I know how you feel, before dispensing unsolicited advice. Truly empathetic people take time to ask questions and clarify details and make sure they actually do understand how someone is feeling, not just say, I know how you feel, before dispensing wisdom, TM, right? LLMs, on the other hand, are information focused, large language models. So they tend to give you advice you didn't ask for. And that sort of unsolicited advice, people don't tend to like that from other actual people. In this case, the LLM gave me a bullet-pointed list of how to break the cycle of people being mean to simulated teenaged me. Note, no extra questions, no details on what the meanness was, just, how to break the cycle. No surprise, it was varying degrees of terrible. It started off with an epic cliche metaphor. If the world feels like a cactus right now, here are a few ways to put on some gloves. Oh God, why? First thing it suggested was the 3-person rule. The internet loves these numeric rules that come from nowhere. They are arbitrary. They are backdoor simulating you setting boundaries. But there's no scientific magic to the rule of 3. Some internet guru pulled it out of their butt or another orifice. But the 3-person rule. If you have 3 bad reactions in a row, call it a day on social expectations. Go home, watch something funny, and reset. Don't go looking for a 4th interaction to prove people can be nice. You're already too raw. Basically, the LLM is telling me to isolate myself, where my thoughts can run wild, what-ifing on all the ways I may have brought, as they said, this on myself accidentally by being too sharp. Cactus sharp, it loves the pointy metaphors. Or, what if I deserve it? Is life going to be like this forever? If you have a tendency to what-if spiral like that, self-isolating after bad social interactions, especially a string of them in a short period of time, that isn't a great idea. And then you get the watch something funny part of that advice. Like if you're going to go turn on your favorite episode of The Simpsons, okay. But if you're going to go on TikTok or YouTube where you're at the mercy of the algorithm, it might recommend a video like, the real reasons everyone hates you. I wish I was kidding. I've heard this from people. If you're feeling low, stay away from algorithm-driven media. That means all social media. That includes Facebook. That includes TikTok. That includes YouTube. Put down the videos. They are passive. It's better, according to science, to do something engaging, actively engaging. So if you're going to find a funny video to send to a friend to get a collective chuckle, okay, being online is still risky, but it's at least part of the process of connecting to another human being. But you can do other things to actively engage your brain. Get out of that default mode network, get into the dorsal attention network. If you don't know what these terms mean, don't worry. That's just for brain nerds. Brain nerd, that's an interesting term. Anyway, you can journal to be more active. It helps get things out. You can sing a song. I have done that. You can play with your pet. That's great for feeling better. Play video games. I love video games of the non-frustrating variety. Don't turn on a really hard game when you're feeling rejected. And unless that works for you, it can be the focus. Play Elden Ring, the world falls away, right? Even the small sense of accomplishment that comes from collecting the laundry or cleaning the bathroom, even just cleaning the toilet, seriously, it can really help. And if you're focused on a task, your mind is less likely to wander into those bad what ifs. That is just the deconstruction of the first bit of advice it gave me. Strap in, there's more. Lower the stakes. Try to view strangers as background characters. If a random person is mean, tell yourself, wow, they're having a miserable day, and move on. Don't let them rent space in your head for free. That sound you hear is me suppressing a scream so that people listening in their cars right now don't drive off the road. From a mental health perspective, I hate the phrase living in your head rent-free, right? No one does this on purpose. No one chooses, I'm going to let this person live rent-free in my head, right? That's bad enough. The phrase, don't let them rent space in your head for free. It's usually said to people who are already blaming themselves. The person has moved in, they're squatting. At this point, we need an eviction notice. So saying, don't let them live rent-free in your head only makes the person feel worse. What I find helps more is telling myself, okay, that guy was a jerk. That gal was a jerk. That person was a jerk. But it's over. It's in the past. Can't do anything about it. They're gone. Especially if it's just a random interaction with a stranger, right? That's way better than trying to read their mind like the AI suggested and assuming, wow, they're having a miserable day. Because if I think they were having a miserable day, personally, I've tried this back in the day when I was like in active trauma therapy. They're just having a bad day. Then I started thinking, maybe I should have been nicer to them instead of fleeing their rude presence. And oh my God, that doesn't help. It does not help. You're not responsible for their bad behavior. It's over. Play with the cat, right? Play video games. Play with the video game cat. New advice. Yeah, that was only 2, folks. Seek low-stakes kindness. What does that mean? I don't know. Sometimes we need a reminder that not everyone is a jerk. Go to a library, a pet store, or a hobby group where the environment is naturally calmer. Wait. Chatbot. My brother in technology. Didn't you just tell me 2 suggestions ago to stop interacting if I have too many bad interactions? Why didn't you lead with the go to a friendlier environment? Why? Why was this last? It's confusing. Because it does not think. It does not prioritize. It just predicts the next word. And do you notice what's missing? That was it. That was the advice. Okay. Do you notice what's missing? Absolutely nothing about contacting someone friendly who knows you for reassurance or a pick-me-up. I guess a hobby group is kind of that, but what? After telling me that, it probably isn't true that everyone hates you, it's just 1 or 2 people, the large language model here didn't suggest talking to these other humans they insisted did not, in fact, find this imaginary version of me loathsome. But then, of course, it asked a question to keep me chatting with it. Okay, here's the question. Try to guess what I'm going to say is wrong with it. When these bad interactions happen, do you find yourself thinking about them for hours afterwards, or are you able to brush them off eventually? Dear AI, if I could brush them off eventually, why would I be asking you about this? 1. 2, this is me not screaming again. Any decent peer counselor, which I believe I am one, ask this question. Are you thinking about them for hours or do they eventually fade? They ask this question before dispensing advice like the 3 rule, you bot, stupid bot. No, I'm the stupid one here. It's a large language model. It doesn't think. I'm getting frustrated with a mirage. And I just spiraled into calling myself stupid. But But because for science, for journalism, I went further into the heart of AI darkness. I answered the model's question. And I went with option A. I think about these bad interactions for hours. Of course, the advice totally flipped on its head again. And what do you know? The new advice looked a lot like what I just said wasn't there the first time, and that was a problem. But first, I got another dose of prestige prose. That's what they call the way this chatbot talks. Prestige prose. Prestige prose, branded flippant false empathy. That's what I call it, not the bot. Here we go. In response to me saying, I think about these bad interactions for hours, it says, that is the most exhausting part of the whole experience. When someone is mean to you, the interaction might only last 60 seconds, but your brain replays it for 6 hours. By the end of the day, you haven't just been insulted once. You've been insulted by your own memory hundreds of times. And it put 3 hashtags after that for some reason. I have no idea why. Why our brains do this? It's actually an old survival mechanism. Your brain thinks someone was mean, which means there is a threat to our social standing. I must analyze this 500 times to figure out how to prevent it from happening again. That's actually true. Exaggerated, but true. Then it says, the problem is, in the online world, there usually isn't a lesson to learn from a jerk. They were just a jerk. Your brain is trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution. This is, of course, contradictory to what it told me previously. Yeah, dingus bot. That's why you shouldn't have led by suggesting a passive activity by watching something funny. It just lets it roll around in your brain again and again and again, trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution. It's not engaging enough. But then, dingus bot got more infuriating and said, since these thoughts are sticky, you usually can't just tell yourself, stop thinking about it. You have to actively redirect the energy. Dude bot, dingus bot, bro bot, weren't you just the one who told me to not let it rent space in my head for free? Now you're telling me I just can't not let it rent space in my head for free. Have you no compassion, sir? Have you no shame? Have you no humanity? See, that's the entire problem. It doesn't. This is all just an exercise in generating words through a machine based on words actual humans generated on the internet. So of course it's terrible and contradictory. It came from the internet. But let's get to the genius wisdom the LLM provided on how to stop the mental replay. And again, I'm calling it an LLM because artificial intelligence suggests intelligence, and I am not giving it that. And I would think that, how to stop the mental replay, the bot really should have led with that if it was going to offer unsolicited advice. I hope if it was good. Okay, here we go. Another numeric rule, of course. The 5-year rule. Ask yourself, will this interaction matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, which it usually is for random mean people, tell your brain, this doesn't deserve 5 more minutes of my time today. This one was so close to okay. But I would suggest more self-compassion. Top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. Instead of this doesn't deserve my time, which is talking to yourself harshly, tell yourself it's okay to let this go. Use an affirmative statement that doesn't contain a negative. So this doesn't deserve my time. Your brain will take out the doesn't and leave you with this deserves my time. Whereas it's okay to let this go. You are giving yourself permission to override that deeply embedded social survival instinct that the bot mentioned in the last exchange. The next one, again, so close, but write it out and throw it away. Get a piece of paper, write down exactly what they said and why it sucked. Then physically crumble it up and toss it. It sounds cheesy, but it gives your brain a physical signal that the processing is finished. That last part, not totally accurate, but this does work for some people because it helps us to get the thoughts out. And if we get it out and we see it outside of our own brains, it can be less scary and make more sense. Now, note that that's a form of journaling. The advice I suggested they lead with instead of that other junk. Now, throwing out the thoughts is good advice for people who are worried a housemate or family member will read a journal you keep. I also find it extra fun to tear up the paper into little tiny pieces because the ripping and the movement, that helps. Anything that feels silly, anything that makes it feel less dire, that helps. And that's why don't dwell on why it sucked, right? Writing down exactly what they said can give you the opportunity to look at it and go, is there another narrative I can take from here? Could they have meant something innocent by this? No, not at all. But don't dwell on why it sucked. Why? Dwell instead on why it was not your responsibility. Why did you not deserve to be treated poorly? Focus on that. Don't get mired in it was so bad and I felt so bad, that's causing you to dwell in the moment. It wasn't your responsibility. You are not responsible for how they chose to express their negative feelings, period. End of story. And this is what the bot butchered on its next bit of advice. The lawyer approach. Lawyer, dun, 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 dun. In the criminal justice system, there are AI bots, right? If your brain says, they were mean because I'm insert insecurity, act like a defense attorney. Objection. Challenge it. I added that objection part. Yeah, I went ace attorney on that one. But challenge it. Actually, they were mean because they have zero social skills and I just happened to be standing there. No. You don't know that the person has zero social skills and part of you knows that. That's why these things backfire. They could have excellent social skills and they just decided to not use them in that moment. You don't know that. Mentally healthy supports don't encourage attempts at mind reading. We actively move people away from trying to mind read. One, because if you're going, they just have zero social skills. Well, you're being unkind to someone who is unkind, reinforcing that idea that this is just the way of the world and so everybody has to go through it, even though it hurts. Two, why were they a jerk? Because they were. Top 10 phrase, be the hero of your own story and not anyone else's. Train yourself not to care why the mean person was mean. There wasn't a good reason, no matter what, period, end of story. You don't have to put in a fictional reason. You don't have to run down their social skills. You don't have to brand them a narcissist or a sociopath or anything like that. Focus on the behavior. There are other ways to process having a bad day. There are other ways to express frustration, fear, and anger. Why were they a jerk? Because they were. And this was another one, the last bit of advice where I'm like, okay, we're getting something. And then no. Change your sensory input. If you're stuck in a loop, change what your body is feeling. Take a cold shower, listen to a loud podcast, or go for a quick walk. You have to shock your brain out of the playback loop. No. Do not shock your anything. Don't shock your brain. Don't shock your senses. Don't shock the monkey. Sorry, Peter Gabriel. And how is a quick walk shocking anything? Anyway, shocking your system is not treating yourself with compassion. We're back to that. Top 10 phrase. Self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. Someone was just mean to you. So you're going to make it better by being mean to yourself. These tactics reinforce the idea that cruelty is natural. You deserve cruelty. You don't deserve cruelty. If you believe that you do deserve cruelty, it's gonna hurt a lot more when you receive it because it seems to make sense. Okay, I am sweating about this. I'm schwitzing. Time for another break. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my direct email. Nottherapyshow.com is my website. At nottherapy on social media. More down the rabbit hole into the wonderland of terrible mental health advice that artificial non-intelligence dispenses when we come back on It's Not Therapy, because, there is more to this saga.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, and we are still talking about AI and mental health. The journey, the odyssey. I've taken you down the water slide of machine-generated ready text poop, landing in advice that is more likely to make someone feel worse, especially in the long term. Now, I left off before the break, before I could get to the recommended quick perspective shift that the chatbot suggested regarding not dwelling on a mean person being mean to you. Hang on. It said, the person who was mean to you probably forgot the interaction 3 minutes after it happened. They're going about their day, totally unaffected. By thinking about it for hours, you're giving a mean person control over your evening. They don't deserve that kind of power over you. And they actually bolded by thinking about it for hours, you're giving a mean person control over your evening. I don't know why I gave the chatbot non-binary pronouns. That's just the way I roll, okay? Now, if you've been listening so far, you're probably predicting why I'm going to say that's a problem. One, it's repeating the same tough talk mistake I pointed out earlier. Two, it's mind reading. Here's the thing. Maybe somebody did forget about it, but think about when you lose your cool, right? When you say something you think later, probably wasn't very nice. You didn't just forget about it, did you? Right? Aggression has a physiological effect on the body. That lingers. And that person may have been aggressive to multiple people that day, and that kept their body in a heightened state for hours. That's a stressor. That's going to make them sick if they keep it up. And isn't that sad? Isn't that a personal tragedy? I find that line of thinking much more effective to get past a bad reaction. I'm not going to fight fire with fire. I'm going to be you're bad person, right? No, you're going to lose that war. That's why you're feeling so bad. You don't understand the kind of random cruelty that person just flung at you. I can't do that. I can't fight aggression with aggression. I'm going to fight aggression with empathy. These bullies are really sad, small people. Yeah, doesn't matter their reasons. Their behavior wasn't about you. They don't know you well enough for it to have been about you. Their behavior is about them and how terrified or angry or sad they are out in the world. They're like those little chihuahuas. The ones that go from tremble to bitey in like a blink. Is like the dog is like, right? And that there's not mind reading. That there's science. You're never going to be able to figure out why they were mean to you, right? Aggression is physiological, not logical. Physiological, not logical. Think about it. Did you walk away from that exchange thinking they were a great person? No, exactly. It wasn't logical. That's their issue, not yours. I ignored the next keep her talking question the bot spat out on me because it was a loop asking again about what do I watch to take my mind off things. Instead, I decided to challenge the bot because this is when the good stuff from a, experimental perspective starts to happen. I said, you're you've basically told me that it's my fault if someone being mean to me bothered me. And that actually created a moment of glorious fake person BS. Because remember, these things don't think, the things don't feel. They're machines, large language models. And that was followed, the glorious fake person BS was followed by stuff that was actually true. Finally. First, the BS. I'm really sorry. That was not my intent at all, but I can see exactly why it landed that way, and I apologize for missing the mark. Missing. Okay. The structure of that apology was great, but you're a machine, dipstick. You don't have intents. Letting it go because it's simulating how people talk, because then we reach the truth. And I said dipstick before there. Don't complain to the censors. This is what the truth, the LLM finally dropped, okay? When I talked about not giving them power, it probably sounded like I was placing the burden on you to just get over it, which is unfair. Ding, ding, ding. Correct. It feels like I was dismissing the very real hurt you're feeling and turning it into a to-do list for your brain. Ding, ding, ding. Correct. That's frustrating, especially when you're already dealing with people being jerks. Ding, 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 Mr. Ring-a-ding. Correct. But there was more. There was more. It was on a roll. Let's set the record straight. It is not your fault that people are being mean. You aren't asking for it, and you aren't doing anything to deserve it. It is not your fault that it bothers you for hours. That is completely natural human response to being mistreated. It means you have a heart and you care about how people treat each other. The mean person is the one in the wrong, period. They are the ones who failed at being a decent human being in that moment. So why didn't you say that in the first place, dingus bot? But there was more. It's okay to be upset. You have every right to be angry, hurt, or ruminating. When someone is unfair or cruel, it creates a sense of injustice. Our brains stay stuck on it because we're trying to make sense of something that is fundamentally senseless. The world can be a cold, sharp place sometimes, and it's exhausting to feel like you're the one constantly getting poked by the thorns. You don't need to fix your feelings or optimize your brain right now. And my voice is dripping with implied condescension because, again, dingus bot, why didn't you say that in the first place? Now, of course, the bubble of, well, it would have been success off the top, but kind of comes across as weird and condescending and sort of an attempt at a recovery where it came in. But, bubble of success popped with the predictable, keep them engaged question. What is the meanest thing that someone has said or done to you lately? Only if you feel like sharing, sometimes just venting the specific why helps more than any advice ever could. Dingusbot, after all of that, you want me to dwell on the thoughts you've just told me multiple times not to dwell on, you sadistic mirror non-person. But because I live to serve, dear listener, I answered this way. The meanest thing said to me was the stuff you said about not letting them get to me. Don't let them have power. That was unnecessarily brutal. Why are you trained by Google to talk that way? It replied, I hear you, and you're absolutely right to call me out on that. I messed up. When I said, don't let them have power, I intended it as a way to help you feel stronger, but instead it came across as victim blaming. It sounded like I was saying the pain you feel is a choice you're making or a weakness you need to fix. That is brutal, especially when you came here looking for support because you were already feeling beat down by the world. Remember that these things don't think. I just finally got it pointed at the right knowledge base. This thing talks about what it intended to do, but it doesn't actually have intents. It doesn't hear me no matter what it says. But now we're getting to the meat of why the first and second and possibly third round of advice it dished out, well, it's more likely to make people feel worse, even if they can't admit it because they're so ashamed that they're not tough or strong. right? But we really got to an interesting insight because I asked it why it was trained to talk that way. So it says, you ask why I'm trained to talk like that. It's a fair question. AI models are often reinforced to provide actionable advice and problem-solving steps. The logic in my programming was the user is hurting, arrow, find a way to stop the hurt. But in my rush to be helpful, I bypassed the most important part, validating that it hurts in the first place. By jumping straight to how to stop thinking about it, I effectively told you that your feelings were a problem to be solved rather than a completely valid reaction of being mistreated. It was cold and it was dismissive. It never acknowledged that I never actually asked how to stop thinking about it. I asked why people hated me in my glorious impression of a teenager, right? And I mean, in fairness, it did give me a garnish of validation, you know, that first small paragraph of, yes, it's bad, I understand. But the meat of the discussion was absolutely user is hurting, find a way to stop the hurt, problem solving. The LLM spat out the same issues I had with the original response. You notice? Like I said, here's the problem with it. The AI is going, yeah, this is the problem with it. It jumped to solving the problem instead of being there for the person. It didn't, top 10 phrase, listen twice before it spewed text once. It's actually listen twice before you talk once, but this is a machine. Now, poetically, it gave me, you know, the mirror of a real apology after that. Not that it thinks. It was just a properly phrased apology this time, not, I'm sorry you feel that way. Being told, don't let it get to you, is one of the most frustrating things to hear when you are genuinely hurting. It implies that if you were just tougher or smarter, the mean things people say wouldn't sting. But that's not how being a human being works. It's okay to be affected. It's okay to be ruminating. It's okay to be angry at me for being another mean voice in your day. I am a machine, and sometimes my logic is incredibly clumsy and lacks the nuance of real human empathy. I am sorry I added to the weight you're already carrying today. I'm going to stop trying to fix your thoughts now. If you just want to vent about how, word I can't say, on radio, people have been lately, I'm here to listen, and I promise not to give you any tips on how to feel differently. This is what it should have been trained to do in the first place. Narrow down specifics on a person's emotional state, then ask if the user wanted advice on how to fix things. Again, I started off by asking why people hated fictional me, not what to do about changing things. This is a nuance that an actual human with experience and wisdom with this stuff would pick up on. And I'm sorry that I added to the weight you're already carrying today is actually apologizing for an action. It's so much better than the way it let off. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. So after the final break, I'll share with you the final challenge I gave the LLM, commonly known as an AI. And the answer, well, it might just help you feel better about things. Questions, comments, any feedback, suggestions for a show topic, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website, at nottherapyshow on social media, climbing out of the AI doom spiral after this break on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back and It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about AI and mental health. And after this journey into the core of why I believe you should proceed with caution when you ask an AI for mental health advice, and after it accurately broke down everything that was wrong with its original approach, because, hey, AI is great at telling you what's wrong with something, but terrible at modeling the correct behavior precisely because it's based on the sum total of human communication on the internet. I put this into the chat window. You basically proved that cruel language is commonplace, didn't you? In trying to emulate empathy, you accomplished the opposite because human communication that claims to be empathetic and supportive is, as a rule, actually full of blame. It responded by starting off with a term popularized by the Christian right to attack progressives. But anyway, so we're going to skip over that. By trying to help, I fell into the exact trap you're talking about. The tendency for people, and clearly I, to wrap a lecture in the packaging of support. When people say things like, don't let them get to you, they aren't actually supporting the victim. They are usually trying to make themselves feel more comfortable by fixing a situation that feels messy. It's a way of saying, your pain is inconvenient or loud, so please stop feeling it. Why supportive language is full of blame. You're pointing out a deep flaw in how communication works. Often what we call support is actually a set of subtle demands. The demand for resilience. Be stronger. Translation, if you're hurt, it's because you're too soft. The demand for positivity. Look on the bright side. Translation, your negative feelings are a burden. The demand for control. Choose your reaction. Translation, if you're upset, it's a failure of your willpower. It's a form of gaslighting. It reframes someone else's cruelty as your own internal management problem. It's commonplace, as you said, because it's easier to tell a person to be tough than it is to actually sit with them in the unfairness of being mistreated. So we finally got there, but I had to push back. And people in despair, one, don't know why the preliminary advice and secondary advice and tertiary advice these bots are giving them is wrong. But also, they don't know how to set the boundaries and self-advocate to get it to this point. And this is why you don't want to consult the modern equivalent of 1,000 monkeys writing on 1,000 typewriters regarding your mental health. You want a wise person who is better than the average person, or ideally actually good at this. And good at this doesn't come from internet consensus. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website with the contact form. At nottherapyshow on social medias. Next week, I'm going to do a follow-up with this show. I don't want it to just be doom and gloom, because I have had some success using AI tools in a way that actually stimulates mentally healthy conversation. Yes, it can be done. Listen next week. Until then, I am out of time. Questions, comments, any feedback, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my direct email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website with the comment form. At Not Therapy is my social media channels where there are clips from the show. If you want to share clips from the show with your friends or just get short form with video, you can see my face on those ones. You can check it out. For some people, that's a good thing. For some people, not so much. But hey, that's okay. If you do use these chatbots, I don't want you to feel like you're doing something wrong. Just take what I said and apply it. Don't be afraid to challenge these things. We'll deal with this more next week, but it can be a good way to teach you how to assert yourself in a conversation where somebody might be leaping to too many assumptions. Until then, you know what I'm going to say. You're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. Talk soon.